Hey there, it's me again, Brett Fish, and welcome to another episode of Race with Me. And I just want to say up front, if you have been watching these from the beginning, then we are on video number 18 of 50 ideas for white people asking, but what can I do about race? If you haven't seen all of them, then I want to encourage you to maybe go to my YouTube channel, Mr. Brett Fish, and subscribe, and you can catch up on these ideas. We are looking at hitting 50 ideas for white people asking, but what can I do when it comes to race and things like that? And the idea that we're going to be touching on today is quite an interesting one to me. And it is this idea or this notion of the better black. So let's check it out. So this idea of the better black was introduced to me by a friend of mine who shared it in terms of a church context. So she was part of a church in Cape Town and part of a weekly meeting, a cell group, where she was the only black person in this group. And she described it as a group of lovely people, amazing people. But within that context, as the only black person, after a period of months, she felt this pressure to appear as this idea of the better black within the group. So in terms of how she spoke, in terms of the kind of music she listened to, in terms of how she dressed, she always felt that there was a certain type of pressure to conform to what felt like the standard of the group. And being a group of white people, the standard was whiteness. And so how did she as a black person kind of fit in or conform? And so it talks about pressure to fit in, pressure to conform. It talks a little bit about whiteness being centered again, that whiteness is seen as normal, as the standard by which things must be measured, and the sense of not being accepted as you are, with the language you speak, with the way you dress, with the music you like, the food you like. There was a sense of you always have to fit in with us. Yours is not good enough. You are not good enough. And I can't imagine what that must be like. There are not many groups where I have been the minority in a group. And I think that's another aspect of this as well, is that there's a group of white people that have a black person that is part of the group, maybe a colored person or an Indian person. And so there might be a sense where the group feels, oh, look, we're being diverse. But often in those cases, it might be a meal time, it might be a friendship group. My wife Val has a friend who is part of a group where it's a group of school girls or women now, but they were schoolgirls, and one of them is a black person. And so again, there's this sense of a single minority person in the group and all of the pressure and just everything that entails. And while we can never understand it unless in some way we've been the minority in a group, we can seek to understand what that must be like, and we can seek to create a space that feels like home, that feels like belonging. We looked at equity and equality and inclusion and belonging before. And just having people in the room is not good enough if they are feeling like they have to conform to a standard, like they have to be this thing that they are not, that they can't just be themselves because who they are is not accepted, is not welcomed. And we see this play out in many other ways as well. This idea of if you've ever found yourself or heard someone else saying, wow, you speak so well for a black person. Or sure, if I close my eyes, I wouldn't know that you were black. And if we can just pause on that for a moment and just think how dehumanizing and disgusting statements like that are. You speak well for a black person is making a strong statement about how black people speak and how this person somehow has managed to supersede other black people who speak badly, and wow, you speak like us, you speak English, and without taking into account that most of the time a black person might be speaking in their second, third or fourth language. And this ideal notion of I don't think of you as a black person. White people say that to black people as a compliment or thinking it's a compliment. Whereas you are actually robbing them of the identity and saying your identity is not good. But if you somehow can step outside of your identity, then you are accepted, then you are celebrated. This is a really dehumanizing one, this idea of the better black. And when I posted this on social media, the next day I got a message from a colored friend of mine who said the same thing exists for them. And so the better colored, the better Indian, Maybe this idea should go down as the better minority, and in ways we think about it and try to work past it. If you've ever found yourself saying that, we need to apologize. We need to own it, recognize it, admit it, and really just start making sure that we're not doing that. And maybe if you're in a group that has a minority of black, colored, or Indian people, maybe it's about creating a safe space, maybe a one-on-one space where you can speak to your friend and say, sure, can you show us ways in which we've made you not feel welcome? And again, that might be putting a lot of pressure on someone. But hopefully if it comes from a space of you acknowledging, wow, maybe we haven't made that the easiest space. And are there things we could do that could make this space feel more like home for you? And I think part of that is moving away from spaces where we feel comfortable, where there's one black person, one colored person, one Indian person, and really making more of an effort to include and welcome other people. And I think that one of the problems with this notion of the better black is that if we are causing, pressuring other people to conform, to join the group, and this is stuff we've spoken about before, we are missing out on the great melting pot of what somebody who thinks differently, who speaks differently, who listens to different music, who maybe enjoys different food, what they can bring to the group, what ideas and experiences they might bring that will help us to have different experiences, that will help us to expand and broaden our horizons, taste new things, listen to new things, celebrate new things. And so maybe a question that we need to sit with as we try to navigate these spaces is, how can I hold this space so that you feel absolutely comfortable showing up as you are and bringing who you are and what you have to the table? How can we make this a space where everybody feels equally like this is their space, regardless of whether they are in the minority or the majority? And so if you've never thought about this concept of the better black, maybe speak to some of your friends and ask them, have you heard of this? Have you experienced this? And try to start to get an experience or an understanding of what it must be like to be in those spaces and feel like you constantly having to look better, do better, pretend you are something you're not. And just think of the inhumanity of robbing somebody of the identity because they've got to put on a mask or put on a show. And let's try do better. Let's try be better at not letting that be a thing.